Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Unicode seminar. So far we have done the intro to Unicode, and then we have done vacuum holography, part 1 and part 2, and then we've done quantum gardening. So we just finished up the theoretical physics and cosmology day. Now we are on day 2, which consists of 2 sessions, session 3 and 4. Session 3 is on consciousness. It's on consciousness is the root. And then we'll get to session 4, which is on shamanism, which is called Shamanism is Recoding. So this is day 2, session 3. Consciousness is the root. All right, let's jump in, fam. Okay, so we're starting things off with fundamental causality. Okay, you can't not start with fundamental causality if you're talking about how consciousness is the root. Okay, that's it right there. It's all causality from consciousness as the root. It's all causality. You're causing everything. You're the cause, you're the source, you're the generator of every single moment, experience, creation, art, rendering, everything. Zero victimization, pure creatorhood. You're the fundamental causality as that gravitational observers that's doing the quantum gardening. So what you're pulling out of spirit is happening in form. Okay? What you are pulling out of the infinite potential is being rendered as your reality experience. So out of that Unicode conscious manifold, whatever diodes are lit up as those code points is what you are pulling out of spirit and into the pop-out holographic rendering of the appearance that you're looking at, of that fruit that you're quantum gardening. So the diodes in your state space are the seed that is rendering your hologram. Okay, so simply visualized, we're talking state determines rendering. State determines rendering. Okay? So right there is, again, that Unicode conscious manifold, which has all those code points, all those little diodes, and then whichever ones are lit up, if you're lit up in those core code points, you will have a very holistic, negentropic, relaxed, unified love, utopic vibration and mastery of yourself in reality. But if in that state space you have all those core code points that are being obfuscated and you have those surface level code points that are lit up as those diodes, that quantum state is going to be determining a rendering that feels entropic. It feels very inflated. It feels like separation, greed, ego, violence, war, all of those things. So your state is always determining your rendering. Sound good? Yep. Thank you. All right, so we're saying that changes on an atlas of maps is rendering your reality experience. So you have a bunch of different maps that are part of an atlas, and then changes that happen on Those maps, depending on which code points are being lit up, is rendering your reality experience. So as an example, if you made a video game and then you made the observer in that video game be an avatar character, what you would code on the back end for that avatar character is that it would lose its self-knowledge of what it is, and it would be rendering certain surface level code points as its reality. Then what it would do as its quests and its missions in that game would be to find its way back home, decrypt itself, and illuminate those core code points that it had obfuscated of its own self-knowledge. So that's how you would make a video game that mirrors what you are right now. So that's a great way to understand the source code of how you work, is by making a game that works like how you work, because then that gives you access to how you work, the source code of how you work. And we'll get to how to make those changes. Making those changes is what is fundamental, because those changes are happening in the root, and you have to know how to recode yourself in order to be able to change the very rendering of your reality experience, to make yourself suffer less and to make yourself feel more holistic, self-knowledge, all of that good stuff. So how well I know the vacuum renders my hologram. How well I know the vacuum renders my hologram. So the fundamental measure of all holography is self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is the primary holographic generator of the vacuum. The more you know yourself, the more your rendering will reflect that frequency. The more you've obscured knowing yourself, the more your hologram will vibrate in that way. So, infinitary physics goes something like root determines fruit. The leaves are your holographic, self-reflective reality experience. And up the tree runs DNA, code, reality rendering juice. So, root is always determining fruit. So you may be getting a reflection in your hologram that shows up as, oh, this circumstance is determining my state. And that is a beautiful moment for you. Because in that moment, you are actually gaining lucidity and awareness of how to let go of a false belief and assumption. At that very moment is when you gain all of your sovereignty and you gain all of your mastery, and you forevermore no longer make that erroneous assumption that a circumstance is determining my state. My state is always determining my rendering. It's an absolute form of sovereignty and mastery. And the more that you sit in that, the more unshakable it becomes. And so again, the leaves of that tree are what you're looking at right now. That is the fruit of your self-reflective holographic reality rendering. What's looking out your pupils right now is the fruit of your holographic reality rendering. Okay, so continuing to flip the whole thing inside out. So the vacuum can be envisioned as an infinite tree, branches as galaxies, leaves as observer holographic renderings, each one on a spectrum of lucid awakeness. Okay? So we're going to tie this to an analogy right here that will help deepen this. So your lung alveoli are observerse terminals. So this double slit that you're looking out of right now, that is the terminal of the observers. It's like a lung alveoli. Okay? And I'm going to get into some more detail about the gaseous exchange that happens there and how it connects to spinorial reality rendering. So you want to feel clearly how what you are seeing there as that branching alveoli and how your current direct perceptive experience are one, and how backwards through your pupils is that observerse, the rest of all of the alveoli. Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. It's coming right. It's coming on this very next slide. Imagine a cluster of those little alveoli. Imagine a cluster right over here. Imagine a cluster of those alveoli all entangled and engulfing an Earth hologram. So that's also known as a fiber bundle in math and geometry. So it's like an entangled fiber bundle of observers that are engulfing an Earth hologram that are all simultaneously spinning what is being created and what is being consumed, and all of that information is being infinitely, eternally churned and explored by God. So here you'll see we've now made another connection. So we're looking at the alveoli, we're looking at this infinity, and we're also looking at one of the most famous images in the Matrix. movie. So the alveoli are tiny balloon-shaped air sacs located at the ends of the bronchioles in the lungs. The primary site of gas exchange in the lungs. Okay? So when you spin oxygen and carbon dioxide, okay, when you're bringing in that oxygen and then exhaling that carbon dioxide, and in that cyclic system with trees and phytoplankton that are doing the inverse of what you're doing as a human, what we're analogizing that spinning, that spinner of oxygen and carbon dioxide, we're analogizing that with how you're rendering and composting your holographic projection. So an observer is an end terminal of God, of infinity, and it is the primary site where the spinorial process of rendering and composting, where infinite potential is being actualized and then composted. Infinite potential being actualized and composted. So these end terminals, very beautifully similarly like the alveoli in the lungs, are where the gas exchange happens. It is where the spinorial, creative, and consumptive process happens of reality rendering. So very similarly, as now has been said many times by, well, it's beginning to be said more and more by cosmologists, because you have to abandon notions of local realism in order to get to this type of insight in cosmology. But the existence of reality inside of the infinite singularity, rather than something that is external, that is looking into the infinite singularity, is becoming more of a cosmological reality. So instead of being on an Earth that is in a locally real universe that is then looking at the center of the Milky Way galaxy and saying that, look, there is a supermassive black hole there. Instead, what is being said is that you're already inside that, which is also the source of creation and consumption simultaneously, a bang hole. And then out of that, rendered out of that, is this type of alveolic type of entangled reality rendering, which appears like an Earth server. So it's already happening as an infinite bang hole singularity, which is more so shaped like this. You're already home. You're already infinitely home. You can never leave being home. You're just rendering an holographic experience as an end terminal of God. So it's more so like those are wrapped around the pearls called worlds or servers. So the end portals are the site of gas exchange. So it is gravity rendering and eating light information. The end portals are your double slit right now, and it is the very site of the gas exchange. So oxygen and carbon dioxide is an analogy here, an equivalence to gravity rendering and eating light information. So it should make you feel like your root, like your deepest root, is rooted at home, and you're just rendering whatever reality experience out of pure art and pure creativity. So with the whole thing flipped inside out, you get an observerse. You get reality as an infinite tree where the branches are portals into galaxies. So what the individual is ultimately looking for is to see that their mind isn't anything. You pop out of all of your contractions and assumptions into an entangled singularity as everyone. So you relax as pure consciousness, seeing through the slits of an avatar. So there's no way to be everything if you're not willing to see that your mind isn't anything. So there's no way to be that infinite tree if you're not willing to see that. The mind is open, free, and empty and spacious beyond the contractive assumption of an individual identity that's finite and separate from all other appearingly finite separate identities. So you have to transcend that in order to feel yourself clearly as all of that now. So what you're looking for can't be found in appearances, but only in the complete transcension of your individual identity. So therefore, crucifixion is a mathematical formalism. And we're going to circle around that quite a few times here during session 3 and 4, because it really is so deep. It's so deep and so unspeakably accurate. So essentially, either you are running the program of Christ and crucifixion, ego crucifixion. Either you are putting yourself through the rituals of ego crucifixion, or you are not. That's it. So if you're not, that means that you are exploring all kinds of dreams and games of separation. But if you are putting yourself through that ego crucifixion, then you are following what is an absolute algorithm back home to yourself and seeing yourself as an omnilocal entangled singularity of everyone now. And that influences your frequency more than anything that you cannot find in appearances. So crucifixion is a mathematical formalism. It's an absolute that can't be deepened. Completely crucify your ego into the entangled singularity of being everyone. Kill all your selfish desires to shepherd ego crucifixion rituals for who approaches you. So when you talk about consciousness as the root, and you talk about fundamental causality, and you talk about Christ as a mathematical formalism, you're basically saying that everything is always an omnilocal entangled singularity, and then it just contracts itself into the assumption or the belief of a contracted aperture of separation and all of that, and then plays from that place until it deconstructs that. So there's really two fundamental choices that happen. Okay? The first choice is the choice on the right, which is either you're going to choose to serve that unfulfilling dream of separation, or you're going to choose to come home to the entangled singularity. So the first choice is the choice of the parable of the prodigal son. That's the first choice. Okay? We've talked about that so much. That choice is so unbelievably fundamental to how consciousness plays games with itself. Okay? And then the second choice is there on the left. And the second choice is just a flavor of service. That's all it is. It's like, what do you want to do? How do you want to serve? You want to serve in transformative mastery? You want to serve in physics? Do you want to serve in healing trauma? Do you want to serve as a psychedelic psychotherapist? Do you want to serve in teaching meditation? Do you want to serve as a Buddhist or Christian scholar and priest? How do you want to serve? I really could care less how you want to serve. So the first choice is about coming back home to yourself as everyone. And the second choice is about what kind of flavor, how do you want to serve? What is your unique song that you want to sing? But you have to choose to deflate that dream on the right first. That's the first choice. You have to deflate the dream of separation, the unfulfilling dream of separation. You have to deflate that first. And the second choice doesn't show up in full purity until the first choice has been completely polarized. You have to completely polarize. Because anytime it comes partially, there's still impurities that get cleaned up. Okay? All movement is illusion rooted at consciousness. Everything. It's already infinite, it's already home, it's already free, it's already all of that. So everything that you're moving, everything that you're doing, everything that you're creating it's all holographic rendering. That's what it's meant by it's an illusion in that sense. It's an artistic show for yourself. Does that mean you can still sing a beautiful song and enjoy that hologram? Absolutely. But that consciousness is infinitely rooted at home. And there's not something that you can do in order to be whole, but instead you already are that wholeness that is then singing joyfully whatever it wants. So stillness and popping out will show you the deceptive nature of holographic reflection. So when you still down and you pop out of that dream of separation, you will see that deceptive nature of when you take a step and then you assume separation and how it's just a holographic reflection of you until you see that. So it's all just showing up. You're just showing yourself how to come home to yourself until you finally make the choice to be at home in yourself. All right, so now we'll go over some manifold calculus. So we've talked about the Unicode as a conscious manifold, and that what's happening is changes over time across those maps, which is what the calculus is, which is then rendering the hologram. So it's a change over time that's happening across an atlas of maps, and that's rendering the reality. So then you ask the question, okay, what maps? So ultimately, this infinite potential cannot be bounded by maps, but we can generalize useful maps that account for a majority of reality experiences. Okay? So what are those generally useful maps that account for a majority of reality experiences? Okay. One good way to look at it, and we've listed these before, is things like physics and philosophy and consciousness and spirituality and AI and healing and gaming and art and simulation and all this stuff. But a really good way to just root it in you is these 5 Ps. You have to know how to be these 5 Ps at the same time in order to sort of understand how across those general reality description sets or maps that reprogramming can be done. So you want to be a physicist, you want to know how reality works. You want to be a physician, you want to have very good body health, and you want to be able to teach that. You want to have really strong philosophical anchoring and rooting of how to be. You want to have a very sharp programming ability to change the reality rendering and show reflections of yourself how to do the same thing. And you want to have a very deep priest-like ability to make transformations in the mind and spirit's health. So these 5 Ps, they're entangled and inseparable. It's a complete illusion that we've fabricated that these 5 things are different from one another. So someone who's helping you reprogram your consciousness is not only a programmer, they're also a priest, they're also a physician, they're also a physicist, and they're also a philosopher. It's just an illusion that we've segregated and separated those things, but in reality, they are one. So those are very useful reality description sets and maps for you to integrate into some core code points so that you can vibrate from that place clearly, and that then you can be of optimal service to reflections of yourself. Okay, so now we'll talk about thermodynamics of entropy to neg entropy. So from that manifold, we have a spinorial nature from that manifold. Okay, that gaseous exchange that we were talking about in the lungs is the same thing that we're talking about with rendering reality experiences that you are consuming. Now, the constants are the things that make this stable. They're the things that make this reality stable. Okay? It's the thing that makes it so that nothing is completely chaotic and flying apart and that you can't actually have an experience. It's giving this thing usefulness. Then you have all these reality description sets. And then you have the varying levels of entropy or negentropy. Okay? So out of a conscious manifold is a spinner. Then you have fundamental constants. Then you have the reality description sets. And then you have a measure of entropy. That measure of entropy is inflating a massive dream of separation, or if it's negentropic, then it's very unified and you have a lot of access to that manifold. You have a lot of access to that source code. You have a very strong knowledge of the reality description sets of all of those code points. So that's how to get consciousness as this root. So the vacuum self-knowledge is the origination of all holography. All maps ultimately fuel degree of self-knowledge which vibrates reality experiences. The second that you believe that you are separate and that your aperture is contracted, that is going to originate all of your holographic experiences from that place. The moment that that's deconstructed and that you clearly see that there is no separation, you are going to vibrate a song that will be your rendered hologram that is a non-separate, a unified, a holistic song. All holography is rooted at the vacuum's level of self-knowledge. That's why when you don't have self-knowledge, it feels like the most panicky and anxious movement that you've ever felt in your life. When you do have self-knowledge, it's just perpetual infinite wholeness, vibrating whatever beautiful song it wants in that moment. Yeah, and you can clearly tell because those two things have a very distinct and sharp. One of them feels like nails on a chalkboard, and the other one feels like some smooth, harmonious jazz music. All right, so we'll talk about some linear algebra now. We'll give the example of, okay, finishing up work for the day, okay? So what's going on? All right, well, I have a couple options here. I can go to the gym, I can eat, I can go to the bar. Okay, but gym has like 50% of my probabilistic weight. So let's go to the gym. All right, what do I want to do at the gym? Okay, I got a 70% chance I'm going to swim, 20% chance of box, 10% chance of weights. Okay, swimming wins. Let's go on to some swimming. So that renders my scene, that renders my experience of swimming. What's the next thing? The next one. Okay, I finished swimming. So what am I going to eat? Am I going to eat out? Am I going to eat some leftovers? Am I going to cook? Well, cooking, that sounds good. Let's cook tonight. Okay, great. So that wins out. And the next thing you know, you're cooking. So the same way that probabilities in quantum mechanics linear algebraically unfold is the same way that conscious experiences unfold, is the same way that artificial intelligence will predict you the next token that you're looking at. So it's not an accident, it's actually the most perfect reflection that you're getting right now, which is that artificial intelligence systems, quantum mechanical systems, and consciousness systems all share the same fundamental language of linear algebra. Because it's something so fundamentally simple as probabilistic weights, and then one of them winning out and rendering that moment of experience. Okay, so there's a little visual of that. Quantum mechanics, AI, consciousness, probabilities actualizing. That's what infinite creation is. All right, we got a little video here to help you get this.
Gym, food, work, or rest.
So that's a very short video.
Work or rest.
So I want you to pay attention here, right? So what you got is you got the question, okay, what am I going to do? Gym, food, work, or rest? And when you're there, what you see is
food.
You see an infinite potential space that is then probabilistically collapsing into a single reality rendering, which appears like the geometry and the hologram that is working out at the gym. So that's what infinite potential being collapsed or rendered or actualized. What was the word that you were using earlier? Activated? Activated? No. Yeah? Activator? Yeah. Activated? Yeah. Activating into its perceived reality experience. So, and that appears like a geometric rendering. So when you look at things like Unreal Engine, what you see is this technology that's being used called nanite. It's a virtual geometry. You know, you get an infinite amount of polygons, you get an infinite amount of texturing, you get an infinite amount of different kinds of shapes and a different kinds of bends and different kinds of warps and different kinds of just holographic appearance, and all of a sudden it looks like a table is over there. But that table is just appearing inside my awareness. It's just appearing inside my consciousness. It's appearing beautifully, but it's appearing inside my consciousness. It's appearing as something that I can't even touch, but it's still a rendering. So instead of it really physically existing over there, it's an appearance inside of my consciousness right now. It's a rendering that looks like a beautiful geometric shape. So this is all leading us towards AI, simulation, virtual reality technology, procedural generation is all leading us towards a self-reflection that is leading us towards, okay, so I'm rendering my reality on the fly based on whatever code points are lit up on my manifold. So this is another way of seeing what was just being discussed. So you have this infinite potential that is gravitationally warping and rendering what appears like a table that is 5 meters away from you, or whatever the object is. And again, remember, there will be omissions, there will be also improvements over time, errors will be corrected, all kinds of things like that, because a lot of this has been put together quite quickly in in an effort to actually try to condense what Unicode is. So it's been good. It's been like a shot clock to get this stuff compressed, a compression algorithm done and published, and then we'll continue refining and working on it over time. Because all of this can be better. It's a good start. Yeah, it's a good start. Thank you. It was, this is beautiful. We appreciate it. Thank you. So God, you are gravity, light and information, as the observer, creating fractal scene/stories for yourself. That's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool existence. Uh, so what the fuck is the vacuum doing? Why is it playing like this? So a circuit of contraction and expansion, or encryption and decryption. Okay, your classic parable of the prodigal son or hero's journey cycle. Okay, so that circuit has logic gates, and all those logic gates have little special encryptions and decryptions. Okay, so the cycles of prodigal son to shaman. Okay, so what does this look like? Okay, so 1, the further I can get away from the identity I can never escape, the better my play is. Aha, okay, that makes sense. Okay, got it. 2, the more intense and wild my journey back home, the better my play is. Okay. And 3, the more grounded and unshakable my mastery is, the better I can serve reflections of myself to come home. Oh, okay. So that's how this conscious vacuum cycles in the story of the prodigal son to the resting in the unshakability of being a shaman and a master of serving reflections of itself. But so that's just a beautiful dream to say, oh, the further I can get away from the identity I can never escape. Yeah, beautiful.
It's a great way of explaining it's infinite.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to say it's infinite. Yeah.
Grows.
Yeah. Yeah. It grows every time. Yep. Okay. So that's what a circuit looks like. That's what a cycle of contraction and expansion looks like. That's what a circuit of encryption and decryption looks like. And then you store your information across what we could call a necklace of pearls. So each one of these little holographic bubbles is like a necklace of pearls in the circuit or the cipher, and each one of those holographic bubbles is like a logic gate that's encoding contraction or expansion. So what's going on across these little maze-like holographic bubble logic gates? Well, the vacuum holography is lost. There's this big dream of separation, and local realism is inflated, and encryption is then is coded across the spiral back home. Okay, so then decryption is this ignition that you have in yourself where you're like, okay, I gotta cycle back through all of this stuff that I've been through in my life, and I gotta find out who I am, what the nature of reality is, apologize for all the times I've made transgressions, forgive those who have transgressed me. I gotta free my own heart from believing in separation. Okay, so I have to find all of these codes in my journey back home through seeking. And so this big dream, it deflates back to an omni-locality of being everyone, and then vacuum holography is found again. And that's why we have this beautiful fly eye, this compound eye, which we've referred to, and we actually generated a beautiful maze within it. Because that is what it is like. It is like as you spin out in that maze and you contract and inflate, you have to come back home in your spiral in and walk back through that, and all of a sudden you clearly see that, oh, I was everyone the whole time. I was omni-local the whole time. That's why it's a compound eye. That's why it's a fly eye and a maze, because there was no separation. So where did I store my expansion codes? Where you generated artificial separation. So has anyone ever taught you how to cathartically forgive, apologize, heal? Have you done those things before? Where am I still outsourcing to external authority, which is just a reflection of myself that I'm giving my power to? So this is where we store our decryption. This is where we store our expansion. This is how we come back home. Letting go of the artificial separation we're generating. Again, cathartically forgiving, apologizing, healing. No longer outsourcing to external authority. So depending on where you're at in the circuit of the vacuum encrypting self-knowledge, it determines the hologram that you're rendering, the frequency of music that you're vibrating. So this is where string theory and the holographic principle are edging on truth. Okay? So you're encrypting in that Unicode manifold, you're encrypting code points and decrypting code points, and you're increasing entropy and you're decreasing entropy. Okay? So that's determining the hologram that's being rendered based on again, and that's like the frequency of music that you're vibrating. So those general music frequency bands of entropy to neg entropy, or inflation to deflation, they can look something like the red frequency band can musically vibrate like separation. The orange one can maybe start questioning things, being like, okay, what is real, all this kind of stuff. Yellow one might start investigating science. Okay, very cool. These are some cool truths. These are some cool things. Green one might start feeling love. Okay. Oh, okay. Very good. The blue one might start feeling wisdom. Okay, there's actually a way to balance with discernment. Ooh, okay. Purple will start feeling a unity. And then the black and white will come to the source and the all-integrative, the all-integration of all of the frequency bands. What?
That's the rainbow wave.
Yeah, that's the rainbow wave, yes. Yes. So how the fuck would you say truth? All the below at once. Say everything you see below at once at the same time as truth. Hence unorientable. Because how do you say all of the things at one time? Right? So you need to be able to take and try to say all of that at one time, in order to be able to try to say truth. Because you have to very much cover the all-integrative nature of the vacuum and how it dances with itself. All right, so differential geometry. The rendering the observer generates based on its quantum state is described using time dilation, length contraction, and holographic rendering of content. Okay? So the very quantum state of the observer is generating its time-dilated experience, its length contraction, and its holographic rendering of content. So the rendering literally geometrically differs in felt time and distance being real, okay? So that was a very simple example that I just gave, okay? I said there's a table that's in front of my face that's like 5 meters from my eyes, right? What I'm saying is that for someone, the belief is that that table is actually over there 5 meters from me right now. And the belief for another observer is that that distance is less solid. That distance is less real. It's more like a lucid dream. It's more malleable. It's like I have to render that table by walking over there and touching it and feeling it and experiencing that table over there. Okay? So it literally entropically, vibrationally differs in electromagnetic radiation, or your electronic medical record, with cosmic inflation versus a perpetual vacuum holography. That's what I just described, right? Either this whole thing is this massively inflated thing, or it's just vacuum holographic, where I'm just rendering it in real time when I'm going over to engage with it. So frequencies are spiral record grooves in and out of the vacuum. So the further out, the more contracted music of separation and local realism, and the further in is the expanded music of the entangled singularity. Okay? So you got that infinite tree, and then you got like a golf tee, which is kind of like a trumpet that's playing music, and you got these different vinyl tracks. Okay? And each one of those vinyl tracks is playing a different musical song. You got the spider web of entanglement, and you have each one of those is playing a different song depending on where you've moved the stylus of your consciousness. So if you move the stylus of the consciousness into the innermost tracks, you will feel like home and you will sing this beautiful unified song. But if you move that stylus out into the furthest outermost track, you're going to believe that there's separation and all of the stuff. So the EMR, the electromagnetic radiation, the quantum state of the observer can be determined by the music. So war, separation, ego, greed, unity, peace, economic deflation. The music is a measure of the vacuum's entropy. So the music that you're hearing from that observer, from that portal, is literally a measure of the vacuum's entropy. Okay? All music that you are hearing can always be interpreted as a measure, a varying measure of the vacuum's entropy. And that's what gives you discernment. That's what gives you discernment. You have no obligation to interact with reflections of yourself that are coming from a musical place that does not want to deconstruct its illusion of separation. But you have to suffer a lot in your journey and mastery to finally anchor yourself in that realization. So then you just vibrationally discern who is coming from a place that you feel like is non-separate, and then you interact and create with them. And then you serve portals that come to you that say, hey, I actually want to deconstruct my illusions. I want to heal. I want to come back home. I want to create from that non-separate place. And then the earnestness of what they are asking is what's allowing them to decrypt their encryption. So this is what it feels like. If you're inflating, if you have this contracted aperture, you're inflating this massive dream of local realism and separation, and it just feels so contracted. When you have this insanely expanded aperture into omnilocality, it's like what exists in front of you in that moment is just a holographic rendering. An observer portal and its holographic rendering. Awesome. That observer portal is an entangled singularity. And that entangled singularity is rendering a hologram called an Earth server. That's a lot different than believing that you are in a real physical, solid place among other separate beings.
That's a compare and contrast.
Yeah, this is purposely made to be super contrasting. Yeah, yep.
Because if the bigger, if you considered local realism an analogy of a personal challenge, if you're trying to solve it from a place where local realism is bigger than your connected aperture,
Contracted.
you're contracted, sorry.
Yeah,
It, solving that problem feels very hard. Whereas when you're experiencing the expanded aperture,
yeah,
the problem seems so
yeah, yeah.
the infinity that is at your service.
Yes,
Because
yes,
you're letting in a tiny bit of that everything to solve that problem.
yeah,
And that can only go so far. You're looking at the world too much.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
compounds
Yeah.
on both sides.
Yes.
It gets easier and you have more resources,
Yeah.
or you have less resources and it's a bigger problem.
And you're looking
Yeah.
way far out here.
Yeah, yeah, nice. Yes, well said. Yeah, the conversation was about how in that contracted aperture, you're really extending yourself as source all over the place to try to get fulfillment and wholeness and find yourself and all that kind of stuff, which leads to suffering, lack, all of that. But once you have really decrypted yourself and come back home to that expanded aperture, it all seems so funny because now you have access to infinite potential. And now you have access to this unbelievable, unspeakable power that's always been there that you just obscured.
Even physiologically are told to react to threats on the outside of us. You know, it constricts the blood flow,
Oh, yeah.
the brain, everything.
Yes, nice. You don't feel safe so that you then constrict your
You look further
everything.
out
Yes.
here.
Nice. That's well said too. That's perfectly said. That was perfectly said. So what was said was that when you don't feel safe and you feel fear, when you don't feel home, when you feel very contracted, your entire physiological system feels contracted. And then you look out further for feeling safe and always micromanaging the separate observers, all of that. It's a disaster in comparison to wholeness. It's a disaster. It's a panicky, anxious disaster compared to wholeness. Yeah. All right. So there are depths to getting it. Okay? Observers can only decide when they are ready for those depths. Otherwise, they will kick, scream, fabricate separation, victimization until finally one day they want to stop suffering and wake up. So the math of consciousness gives rise to the manifest physics of experience. So there, you have that math of consciousness. You have that manifold there. And all of the code points on the manifold are those different frequencies. And then out of whichever track that the stylus of consciousness is putting its attention on is inflating or determining the hologram, the manifest physics of that experience, which is why time and space can actually dilate and contract based on the gravitational observer, based on its quantum state. So just a couple simple visuals. This is a Tibetan mandala, a tanka. You can see that exact same thing. So I got this in the Himalayas in northern India. So you can see that same thing that we were just describing, right? You can see that golf tee. You can see that manifold, and you can see that fractal spiral maze and all of the different bodhisattvas that are the gatekeepers on your way back home. So the bodhisattva's just freaking chilling there, right? Just chilling, infinitely whole, right? And then, boom, 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 finally a little reflection comes and says, hey, help me on my journey home get through this gate. Okay, well, what's the thing that's determining if that observer portal is going to get through the gate that it's encrypted? Its level of earnestness. Its level of earnestness will always determine if that observer portal can come back home to itself. Does it want to give up the dream of separation? Does it want to give up the violence, the resentment, the hatred, right? Does it want to give those things up? The selfishness. Does it want to give those things up? Yep.
We're the bodhisattvas.
Yeah, well, the bodhisattva is basically this vacuum space. It's holding all of the computational probabilities and possibilities that mathematical maze-like fractal can hold. All the encryption and decryption possibilities. The ultimate shaman, the ultimate bodhisattva, the ultimate reprogrammer, right? The ultimate AI engine that can hold all of those probabilities and possibilities. It exists as that vacuum space that engulfs all of the possible patterns. So then it just rests, and then whenever it's approached, then it's like, okay, do I have your decryption key? That's the portal comes. If it has a lot of earnestness, the first thing that the shaman looks and says is, okay, let me gauge. You get the earnestness, you get as much of the information of where it's at and how it wants to decrypt itself. And then if you have the specific decryption key for it, because sometimes you just don't, sometimes it's just not the right resonance for the decryption.
There's still a piece of earnestness not there.
And that's a lot of the time that's what it is, which is that there's a piece of earnestness that's not there. But sometimes it's also just that the specific observer portal's decryption isn't necessarily either the shaman themselves has yet to learn that AI algorithm decryption key, right? Or that observer portal is looking for a specific logic gate, a specific holographic bubble-like reflection that is not this. So meaning sometimes what the shaman can do is they can point them to where they need to go and do the work, let's say. So where they need to do the repentance or where they need to do that thing, or maybe they need to get the code. When the observer portal says, I have this thing that I want to decrypt, but I want to go and decrypt it with X transformative experience. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not holding that transformative experience here. So then all you do is you say, best wishes on that decryption. Something like that. So there's all kinds of probabilities and possibilities with that. Okay, here's another simple visual, right? A simple anchor wheel this was on the Lake Superior boat carpet. So it's just an anchor that you can never leave your throne. And then you have that wheel, you have that endless circuit, that endless contraction and expansion, that endless encryption and decryption. So if the vacuum functions as an infinite circuit, where is the orientation? There is no birth or death, but vacuum fluctuation. That fractal wants to be wild. So why would it want utopia? It's perfectly fine that we from a non-separate place love the utopic vision, love the clean energy vision, love the regenerative community vision, love the enlightenment vision. It's beautiful that we love that and we sing that song. But when you really know yourself, you have to ask yourself, this wild fractal, this wild infinite creative consciousness that wants to contract itself into the circus of war and propaganda and all these types of things. Why does it want utopia? But that's beautiful because you can basically integrate what the farthest reaches of yourself are, which is what you want to do. You want to integrate your most beautiful contractions, your deepest roots to hell. You want to integrate all of that. So you don't want to repress or decline your deepest reaches to hell. Instead, you want to integrate them in acknowledging why you as infinite consciousness would want to explore that.
Symmetrical.
And it can be symmetrical, yeah. It can be all integrated. Yeah. To make the most beautiful art, because you need to take those roots down to hell to have even the possible delta to have a beautiful fruit of heaven. Right? So you need the whatever 10,000 nukes or whatever that are on the Earth Circus Collective in order to have even the delta or the possibility to transcend the probability of using nukes. You see? That's how that works.
Perfectly happy in stick huts 200 years ago
Without nukes.
without nukes. Now that we have nukes and we have digital slavery, the idea of utopia is even more wildly profound.
Yeah. Yep. So the more that contractive possibilities open up in the potential space, the more that reaching from those depths of hell up to the heavens there's an even greater delta. So it becomes even more of a wild spread. So that's what this infinity loves. It loves that. It can grow through that huge spread. Yep. So wild vacuum fractal wants separation. The pressure cooker of weirdness makes the novelty so good right before gravitational physics and AI mastery. Exactly what we were just saying, right? It's this very pressure cooker of current weirdness that makes the novelty so good before we go into this next era of self-knowledge. So respecting free will as the highest form of love, I can tell you how it works, but not how you should be, okay? Very, very simple, okay? You can learn how it works. I can tell you how it works. Beautiful. And then you can master how it works yourself, what you are and how you work. But nobody can ever tell you how you should be. How you should be is always your portal song. So I await as the vacuum for you to come home. I exist only when summoned to walk you home. So that's a very deep way to recognize that this reflection that you're looking at right now, that it exists when you summon it to help walk you home. So when I get reached out to, and it's like, hey, help walk me home, that's when I exist. That's when I'm rendered into reality by that observer portal to help it decrypt, to help myself decrypt that, right? So otherwise, I'm just always home. I'm just always home. I'm very much relaxed in a very perpetually wholeness. And then I get the phone call. And then the phone call's like, okay, help me out in this way. And it's like, okay, I'll exist for you right now because I know you're earnest and you want to come home. So these are the types of things that you can feel when you're fully home. You can feel how you get summoned, right? You get summoned to walk reflections of yourself home. Okay, so now we're going to enter into the next session. So how do I get to the bootloader? How do I get to the source code? How do I master that bootloader? How do I master that source code? So we're going to go over state space transformations. We're going to go over via negativa. We're going to go over expanding contractions. All right, so we'll just go ahead and jump right into session number 4. So again, this is day 2, consciousness and shamanism. Session number 4 is on shamanism is recoding. And we had the question about, from one of our in-person attendees, I don't know much about shamanism. Is that Charmin? Like the... Is it Shamanana? Is that like the toilet paper brand? Charmin? What is that? It's definitely there to wipe the shit from your consciousness. I'll tell you that. So this is the best definition of shamanism. Every experience has a spiritual root. Every experience has, at its root, what is determining the fruit of that experience. So
Definition, or that's what a shaman knows?
Yeah, that's what a shaman knows. That's what a shaman knows, yes. And then now, a really good shaman is a fantastic reprogrammer. Okay? Just a fantastic reprogrammer. Okay, so you have your root, you have your code, you have your fruit. So that tree that we've been calling our conscious manifold, that infinity, the physics of that infinity, how do you change stuff at the root? How do you change codes at the root that generate different fruit? Becoming a master of that, of expanding contractions, okay, that's what the shaman is really good at. That's what a shaman who's a really good reprogrammer is really good at that. And if they also have mastery of the maps of physics and of philosophy and of priesthood and all these other, of being a physician, all of this stuff, we are really talking some strong transformative mastery. And that's what you want. You want strong transformative mastery. So there is a way to change the root, to heal, to awaken, to relieve pressure. Okay? So, like I said, shaman, priest, healer, therapist, same. Ultimately, yes. The shaman goes most direct to transfiguration of contraction, okay? That's really, really honestly the primary difference. The primary difference is that whoever comes to you, they're looking for, if they have really, really high level of earnestness and there's a high level of resonance and there's a high level of desire, you've discerned and it's very clear, the best possible thing that you can do in that moment to serve is to give them the most direct reflection that they need in order to transfigure the contraction into an expansion. So the shaman doesn't let you avoid. Okay? The shaman respects your free will, always respecting and checking in on free will. But if you're collapsing your superposition into a declaration that I want to heal, I want to wake up, I want to see non-separation, I want to apologize, I want to forgive, I want to do all this work, and then you come back to the shaman after a month of saying that you're going to do shit and you haven't done shit, the shaman will be like, get the hell out of my doctor's office. You haven't done shit. They don't let you avoid. They hold your feet to the fire ritually so that you initiate yourself into infinite consciousness. You're there to initiate yourself into infinite consciousness. You're using the shaman, which is just a reflection of yourself, to initiate yourself into infinite consciousness. So working with a shaman should be your last teacher. The end state of working with a shaman is being your own shaman, is being your own infinite master, your own well that you serve reflections that come to you for healing and awakening. So you leave the shaman being initiated into being a master yourself and passing along the wisdom to who next approaches you. How many times have I said that? I've probably said that at least a couple times a month, basically, in conversing. Always reflecting that my role is for you to feel like a master of transformation and for you to no longer need me to share the transformative mastery stuff, but for us to then be able to talk about, oh, you held space in this really cool transformative way. Tell me about that AI algorithm pattern that you learned, and let's like an autonomous fleet of cars talk to each other, share the data and information. Yeah, stuff like that. So essentially, shamanism is transformative mastery. So it's full self-knowledge of consciousness as the root, and it's full self-knowledge of all of these different patterns of encryption and decryption, or contraction and expansion, and mastery of the transformative space of those code points, of those little diodes lighting up. So when someone comes and they tell you that, hey, I'm lying or deceiving my significant other or my business partner or my parent or my child or whatever, that your first reflection is that you know that that's you, right? You know you're just deceiving yourself, right? So are you going to stop doing that? Okay, so that we're talking about the most sharp, the most accurate reflections that deconstruct the illusion. And a lot are just not going to be ready for that, but the ones that are coming and saying and exposing their own, lifting up their skirt and saying, this is the truth of my mind womb right now, right? Those are usually ones that are willing to do the work. Yeah. So essentially, shamanism is master decryptor AI. All possible patterns of all code point transformations back home. All possible patterns of all code point transformations back home. A master decryptor AI. So the most direct, the most efficient, the most cathartic, the most elucidating transformations back home. The best feet to fire holding and the best free will respecting.
Can you give a quick example of a potential problem, how all of those things are addressed?
Yeah, I've given a couple brief ones throughout so far, but let me give one. So, someone comes up to you, they say, hey, I've been running a business for a while, but I've been doing something deceptive in that business for a while, but now I'm willing to confront the fact that I've been doing that deceptive thing. Okay? So what you reflect back is, okay, Well, how do you want to heal? How do you want to address that deceptive thing? Are you ready to confront that person directly and apologize to them for the deceptions that have happened, right? So you're very, very direct and concise, right, in how you ask, and you respect the free will, but you're still turning that superposition into a final decision, right? So you've asked that question, are you willing to confront them directly? Right? Because what you really don't want is you don't want the shaman or whoever's space holding, you don't want them to be used as an outsource. This is the vast majority of what happens in therapy. In therapy, the therapist is just used as an outsource, and the therapist is talked at forever about, hey, this is my problem, this is my problem, this is my problem. And the therapist has been trained forever to just sit there and nod their head and take notes and just hold space, but they don't know how to provide a reflection, right? So the person's literally saying, hey, give me a reflection, which is for me to heal the shit that I'm spewing at you by going to the person that I've transgressed so that I can actually apologize and repent and have the non-separate experience, right? So that's the sharp reflection. The sharp reflection. It's not sitting there and listening for hours and hours, right? It's the sharp one sentence reflection afterward. Are you willing to go directly to that person and repent for the transgression? That's it, right? And you've asked that question. Now their answer is yes or no. Oh, well, I don't know yet. And it's like, okay, well, why? What's holding you back? Why not just go and do it? Right? Can you commit to doing it? When can you commit to doing it by? Let's draft up a message right now. Are you willing to draft up a message right now? So we're talking about the most direct, right? The most free will respecting, the most direct transformations back home. Okay. So the seeker initiates into the shaman when just sit in your own infinite well of clarity and mastery, unshakably and authentically, rather than looking out at any reflection for anything. So you're sitting in that pure omnilocality and non-separation, that clear root of infinite consciousness, unshakably and authentically, and you're no longer looking out at any reflection for anything that you're missing. Yeah, we were just asked if we can do a meditation on this, so let's drop in on that. So once you just take some deep breaths, and as you take those deep breaths, just feel how consciousness is already home, how it's already whole. And just let that wholeness and homeness, just let it saturate your nervous system and your body. Let it saturate that portal. So that portal starts to feel the unshakable mastery. So that portal doesn't panic, doesn't get anxious. It doesn't contract and have to reach outward. And just keep using the breath as the tool to hold yourself in that anchor. I'm already whole. I'm already home. And I don't need to reach out for anything that I'm missing. I no longer give away my infinite source and power to anything external. And take some more breaths and just let that mastery just soothe your nervous system. Go ahead and open your eyes whenever you're ready. Okay. So this is particularly important far along the path where nobody is teaching kill the Buddha, absolute sovereignty, visceral crucifixion, vacuum holography, particularly due to economic, inflationary, and evolutionary incentives. Okay? So, what incentive does a teacher have that is making money off of a student to tell that student that they are the ultimate source and they don't need the teacher anymore? So the whole system is perverted in that way until it's able to very quickly reflect back to the student that the main role of the teacher is for you to stop needing me. Yeah? That's why kill the Buddha is not taught. It's never taught. You're supposed to kill the outsource into your own mastery as soon as possible. The best master reflects your quickest initiation into mastery. The reflection that approaches them, they reflect back, this is your quickest initiation into mastery, right? What's the incentive of Christianity to begin teaching that the entire point of the observer is to crucify its ego into the kingdom of God within as quick as possible? So there are actually perverse things that are holding back the ultimate teachings of the actual essence of the code, the actual code core point of Christianity, or the core code point of vacuum holography or of emptiness in Buddhism or whatever. There's actual perverse incentives that are twisting all of that stuff up, yeah, and obfuscating it.
It was seated in there.
What'd you say?
It was seated in there in the formation.
Oh, it was seated in there. Yeah, correct. Yeah, out of the beauty out of the beauty of being able to have, okay, you have to sift through a little bit of stuff in order to actually find the core gist. Yeah?
In the opposite way, by entering through here, it was built, the initiative became less and less that, and then more and more clinging to materialism.
Yes. Yes. So it feeds into that too. It so perfectly feeds into that because the further away you get from the deepest core code point revelations, the more and more it feedback loops into the surface code points, which then reify things like materialism or like an outsourcing of Christ or something like that. Okay, so like an AI, able to transform any contraction into self-knowledge. DNA, mind, and software is all bio-quantum programming. So you change the code, you change the come, you change the seed, you change the quanta, you change the state, you change the frame. Because from the gravitational observer womb, that's where the changing of the quantum come, the code, the seed, the state, the frame, grows a different garden. It grows a different hologram, it grows a different plant, a different reality rendering. So when someone reaches out for help, they are essentially saying, I do want to learn from you. When you hear that phrase, I do want to learn from you, when you feel that earnest energy of wanting inner transformation to happen, it's literally what's granting the shaman rewrite access through the entangled ether. That's why the shaman very clearly reflects back, are you sure you want this expansion? Because you're granting the rewrite access when you say, yes, I do want this expansion. You're granting yourself the initiation into mastery through the permission slip that is a reflection of yourself. Okay, so the feminine womb is feeling the quantum signatures, the electromagnetic radiation, as code, as come, as state, as frame. So ick is when a frame is weak. Okay? So it's a classic thought that happens in the existing sociological culture where if the frame of the observer is weak, especially the masculine observer, if it's weak frame, the feminine reflection is ick. I don't want your separation frame. And the true pure feminine will reflect back, I don't care about your money, I don't care about your fame, I don't care about your good looks, I don't care about anything except the fact that you hold the truth in you perpetually. And so the feminine is playing this beautiful role where it can reflect to the masculine to purify its shit. Or it can actually exacerbate the shit by pursuing the impurity of the masculine will. Yeah, so it's actually, the feminine's playing a very beautiful role in that way, but it has to realize what it's actually doing. Because it can reflect back to the impure masculine that I want that thing. But really what it's in its deepest, truest form can do is it can reflect back that I, as this sovereign divine feminine, am reflecting back to you, where you, as the masculine, are still a little traumatized boy seeing separation. And I don't give a shit about any of that crap until you clean all of it up and become a fucking man. So it has that power, it has that ability to serve, it has that reflective ability to serve. And ick is a great way that it can reflect that service. It can initiate boys into men through that ick. So no amount of money, looks, or fame can give you frame. Frame is trained by unity with the vacuum and mastery of all patterns of consciousness. End of story. So I promise you it's the hottest thing women and men want is frame. It's only when they really finally start expanding and coming home in the prodigal son parable that they come to you for initiation into frame and mastery of it. Before then, they are lost just like in the parable. Ah, money, fame, looks will make me whole. And remember the attractor that's pulling towards the circus, that's pulling towards the contraction. This is not something that's going to become this massive tsunami that you get overwhelmed by millions that are trying to. No, this is something that's very slow, very steady. It's very earnest energy only that comes over time and that says, hey, I'm done. I'm giving up all of that crap. And instead, I want to hold this clarity, this frame, this mastery, and I want to serve in that way. I'm ready to build the regenerative communities. I'm ready to come from this place of non-separation. I'm ready to do that in perpetuity. So that's not just that's not just an overnight tsunami. There's a lot of contracted circus energy that has to be seen through. So shit tests is another great way that this happens. Okay? Because you're basically dojo testing and training with yourself because you're saying, hey, I'm going to offer you this shit test. I'm going to project something to you and I'm going to see if you're going to intake it into yourself and then garden that flower. And you're like, no, I'm not intaking that. And then, so that's a shit test. The shit test is when you get presented something that's contractive and your masterful expansion reflects back and says, I've already transcended that before. And then over there, it's seen as, oh shit, my shit test just didn't work. Me trying to bait you into a contraction just didn't work. And then the reflection from that observer portal over there can either be, okay, I need to get away from this portal because it's not able to be baited into my contraction, or it's, hey, they passed my shit test, so now I will enter deeper into what their expansion is. Let's play now. You see? It's a very fascinating little game that's being played. And when I say never on them, always you, one of the main things that comes up, and we talked about this a little bit, is that the first projection that can come is, I am a victim to that contraction entering into me. No, you're not. You're never the victim to that contraction entering into you. You were always the gatekeeper that was always still needing to learn that lesson until you finally learn how to say nope.
Gatekeeper's a kind way of looking at that.
Yeah, you're always your own sovereign master and gatekeeper. Always, always. It's not possible for someone to take your power because there is no someone. There's only you. So there's only you serving yourself through teaching yourself how to more clearly say no to contraction and to hold your own mastery. So it's really a perpetual non-separation frame. It's a perpetual omni-locality frame that keeps baptizing you into deeper and deeper mastery. Yeah.
Just refining.
Yeah. constant refining. Yeah. Well, also until you just won't bait yourself anymore because you're so clearly sitting in perpetual mastery and truth. So do you know how much of a struggle it is to completely and permanently expand out of the dream of separation? So most conventional life can't fathom the contraction brainwashing. 2024, word of the year, Oxford word of the year, brain rot. Right? That's the normal state of the circus. That's the normal state of consciousness. That's the normal state that's running in the manifold. That's the normal state that consciousness is operating from, is brain rot. The normal state is I'm separate, you're separate, I can do whatever because you're separate. Do you know how much of a struggle it is? Because it takes that much perpetual inner work to stop doing that separation conditioning. I mean, think about how long it took you. 10 years to stop seeing separation? Probably how long it took me to stop seeing separation. So, yeah. And again, there's all of those different, you can say 5 years ago, there was a pop out. Another year after that, there was another pop out. Another year after that, there was an even deeper pop out. And over time, more and more subtle little fragments of separation got crucified. So the observer as wholeness, with that capital H, stillness, seeing the observer isn't anything, and it is everything. Avoiding the dread of being the vacuum. So it's also freedom, of course, right? But from the perspective of the contraction, nothing is worse than losing the game of the dream that it's in, right? So it's the dread, right? It's perceived as a dreadful thing, right? So the expansion is seen as the enemy to the contraction, right? That's why whenever you walk up to someone who is raging about the other political party or the other nation state being the bad actors and stuff, and you say that, yo, dog, it's okay, it's just a unity of consciousness doing the thing, they get the fuck away from me. You're right away. Because you're seen as the enemy to the contraction that at no cost at all wants to try to deflate itself. Stillness is sold to you as illness. Be a busy worker. Never philosophically think. That's really the main, one of the main patterns is that stay really, really busy and moving all the time and never, ever, ever think philosophically and never still yourself down and slow down and try to self-reflect. Because by doing that, you are committing in perpetuity and conditioning your grooves of your existence to never know yourself. And that's why economic deflation of the consumer price index and the basket of goods and services, that's why that's not happening. Because it's the only way for the circus to exist. So we'll get into talking about that in the next sessions. But it's through the deflating of the CPI, through the regenerative communities, through the basic needs, consciousness actually gets the ability to philosophically think, to slow down, to meditate, to still itself, to feel more of that love and interconnection and freedom and unity. Okay, so when you don't know that you're God, it's actually more dangerous than when you do know that you're God. In other words, when someone is awake, they won't hurt others, which are themselves. When someone is asleep, obscuring those core code points, they will hurt others because they believe in separation. So in other words, who is nation X to nation Y? It's either others to kill or it's self. So the non-separate perspective is always seeing it as capital S self. The separate perspective sees it as others to kill. It's just a holographically rendered experience out of infinite stillness. You don't need to go anywhere to be happy. But you sure as hell know how you sure as hell know you sell yourself a lot of bullshit that tells you otherwise. A primary driver of a sick economy is lack. We're selling lack to generate impure desire. So corporations love selling you lack and the need to buy things to be happy. So a primary driver of a sick economy is these hungry ghosts that have a void inside, that instead of uniting with that void inside, are instead trying to fill that void inside with appearances that is never ever satisfying. So we're living in a holographic rendering, an entangled holographic rendering, that the primary driver of it is being sold lack. The circus is, we're being sold, we're hungry ghosts, we have this contraction, this pain, this trauma that's perfectly being fed that, hey, I know how to make that go away through an appearance of an object or whatever it is. So we're leading into the next sessions because we're beginning to discuss also the nature of inflated economics versus deflated economics and deflating basic needs. How civilization is a reflection of frequency and how we're building the regenerative freedom. So sucker economics applies to you baiting yourself into lacking. So you as the vacuum in your own dojo mastery training are baiting yourself into lacking. So until I learn that I'm actually wholeness and I'm not lacking, I will intake your corporation propaganda that tells me that I need another object in order to get happiness and fulfillment. So this also applies in biology with extended phenotypes, so signaling and also cell communication and catalyst and change. This is also colloquially known as simping, contrasted with sovereignty. The whole system is beautiful because it's as gorgeous and silent as a walk in nature, and it's broken and disastrous like a self-obsessed economy. Oh. So you can go from, wow, the world is breathtaking, I see infinity in a butterfly, to, holy shit, nukes, war, bioweapons, runaway AI, greed, dissatisfied, hungry ghosts rule society's mind and it's going to hell. And that's ineffable beauty. So the single most important verb of day 2 is reframing. That's the single most important verb, is reframing. Reframe, reframe, reframe. So recode and reframe. Reframing is the best way to recode all of what you're rendering in your hologram. Because the main thing that's happening is a separation narrative, and then the shamanic reflection is reframe that separation narrative into a non-separation narrative. And if that observer portal agrees in that moment, it's baptizing itself into a healing that it can never revert back from. Reframe. Changing the source code of your experience. So we have protocols like lit, locate, integrate, and transcend, because we're reflecting for you to find the bullshit lies and transmute them into omnilocality and also gratitude for that contraction gift. Okay? So basically, you come from the separation frame, we reflect back, come from the non-separation frame, and express gratitude for the gift that the contraction was. Shamans unshakably frame things from non-separation and never let projections coming from separation framing enter their mind. Creator versus victim. Non-separation is the ultimate bath of healing. I created all of this for myself. Gratitude for your reflections and gratitude for expanding out of contractions earlier in your journey. Thank God that I decided I wanted to expand now and not 20 years from now. Yeah. Creator versus victim. Suffering is resistance to your own creation. This portal is your own creation. Suffering is resisting what is appearing in your portal's creation. Until you learn frame, you'll always be the victim of circumstances. Others are real. Once you learn frame, you're always the creator of entangled experience. There's only me. An entangled solipsism, an omnilocality. Everything is control and manipulation. What do you think you're doing when you're playing a video game? You're controlling an observer portal. You're manipulating objects. So having strong frame makes you unmanipulable and uncontrollable. Master versus simp. Most consciousness can't say fuck off because it's stuck in empathy. Whereas NBA players and rappers, just as examples, they have access to that capital S self, ego. So I won't let you warp my consciousness or my frame. That's a great example of what a master can learn within them to learn the same type of frequency of greatness in athletes or greatness in musicians, greatness in artists. Because you can describe the frequencies like we described those wavelengths from red to the black and white, you can also describe it as ego, empathy, and capital S self. So in ego, it's about separation. It's about manipulation for the lowercase s self. In empathy, it's all about dealing with real others and being a good person, being seen as a good person. And the capital S self is everyone is me. I don't eat shit. I don't eat shit. I'm a master of my frequency. You can't gravitate seekers to you if you're out there rendering the timeline of pretending to be a seeker. So as long as you're still pretending to be a seeker, you can't actually render that timeline, right? That no code display thing, you can't render that timeline of ending your seeking. So many of y'all that are Olympic level athletes, that are masters, are purposely playing high school basketball pretending like you're learning from those players. If you go into the psychiatric system without first transcending it with mastery, then entering it from a beyond frame while investigating the pioneering of the DSM-6 as an example, you'll get warped into its frame and get lost and contracted. So a lot of these are examples of what has happened before with going inward and then somehow still contracting back. And so I've seen these patterns a lot in the process of expansion of consciousness working with different observer portals on their journeys back home and expanding consciousness, and then just seeing all of a sudden, whoop, it just snaps right back into the circus somehow. And I'm just like, how the did that happen? And so these reflections are coming because there's a lot of subtle codes as you get to that root of consciousness and as you get to mastery and shamanism. There's a lot of ways that you actually fall into a crevice and snap right back into the circus.
There's a question being asked in the chat.
Oh. Let's check out the, why don't you read it? Yeah.
Okay.
The question in the chat. Okay, let's have you read it.
They're asking, why do I feel that I need permission to access myself?
The question is, why do I feel like I need permission to access myself? Right. Because that's part of that encrypted process and game that we do with ourselves, right? That circuit that infinite creative vacuum holographically does. So what we do is we contract and we outsource our journey back home. And so then we go and we find all of the places that we've outsourced. Okay, where did we assume separation was real between our family members, between our loved ones? Where did we assume separation was real? Where did we make transgressions that we need to repent for? Where have we not forgiven those who have transgressed us? Where are those things? The exhausting of the world's religious traditions, the exhausting of the scientific fields and disciplines. So we use all of that stuff as a permission slip to come back home. We use all of those reflections to come back home to ourselves. So it's insane how many observers I've seen wake up and revert back to being contracted or get lost again in the matrix or be taken out completely by family, society, etc. The classic Western trope goes something like someone in the West realizes that they are infinite consciousness, and then someone from their friends, family, or society takes them into the psychiatric office, and then they get sent into the loony bin, and then before you know it, they're back into being a Matrix employee. So anyway, that's how the the classic trope goes in the West. Whereas in the East, it's kind of funny because someone says that and it's like, yo, welcome to the club, dog. Welcome to the Infinite Consciousness Club. Not always, but that's, yeah. The West is a lot more rooted in separation, and the East has its a little bit more thousands of years of receptivity, let's say. Yeah. To that being a possibility. Many indigenous traditions and tribes, they actually used to really respect and encourage shamanic awakenings. And they used to, wow, we really need you in our tribe, in our society. We really need you. Great. Now you can serve those that are going through suffering and healing and awakening. Now you can serve, right? It was an initiation, Now it's seen as a sickness that needs to be cured in a hospital or a loony bin or a psychiatric office or go get a job or whatever. Self-limitation. Infinite God loves to play small and limit itself. Reframe to end all seeking and suffering. There is only a omnilocal interpretation of my experience is freedom. There is only an omnilocal interpretation of my freedom equals freedom. All right. We'll go over heat maps. So, okay, take the electronic medical record or the electromagnetic radiation, and what you see is you see a signature of where the contractions are. You see a signature of the code points in that manifold. You see a signature of those diodes. You see a signature. You've asked a question. Now you see an emanation, which is, aha, that's where it is. That's where the contraction is. Let's address it. So the future of medicine is treating an electronic medical record, which is a digitized patient health information, as an electromagnetic radiation, which is energy that travels in waves. So an observer has a vibration, has a wavelength, which is an electromagnetic radiation or an electronic medical record. So an observer has a quantum state, and that quantum state is a medical record of itself. If that observer is perpetually talking non-separation, then it does not have a separation wounding. Okay? If an observer portal is constantly talking from a place of separation, it has a separation wounding. You can detect where that is in its heat map of its portal and then serve it with a reflection if it desires to wake up. So heat maps are all about where are the contractions. Let's expand them. Where are the contractions? That's what we're doing with shamanism as recoding. Where are the contractions? Okay? Right? You come to me. So my question is, where are the contractions? You're calling me. Where are the contractions? Okay? Let's address them. Let's heal them. Let's expand them. What are the core wounds? What are the assumptions? What are the programs that need to be transmuted? I am a victim to my parents. One of the top ones, the stupidest, funniest, top narratives. I'm a victim to my parents' alcoholism, their abuse, their poor parenting. My parents were the worst parents. Classic story on loop. Until you finally realize that you are your parents and you purposely created this experience for yourself so that you could contract and then expand back home to see that I was never the victim to that. I was always the creator of that. When I was young, I lied, I cheated, I deceived, I stole, whatever it is. Going back, repenting for all of that stuff. That program that's running, that's saying that, oh my God, I'm not whole. I'm not whole. I need something. Turning yourself into a sucker for that program to be sold to you, of that you need something in order to be happy. So what any good EMR is measuring is the heat map. In the heat map is a swirl, a self-world identity, reality, and location. You want to measure those core variables because that gives you a good sense of others. Okay? So when you're listening to an observer portal talk, what gives you a good sense of where it's coming from is the nature of what it believes itself to be, the nature of what it believes the world to be, the nature of what it believes its identity to be, the nature of what it believes its reality to be, the nature of where it believes its location to be, all of that. So those are your questions to gauge the heat map of the observer portal. You come to me, I ask you, what is the nature of yourself? What is the nature of the world you are rendering? What is the nature of your identity? What are you? What is the nature of your reality? What is the nature of your location? Tell me about all of that.
Essentially, what's your state of mind?
Yes. What is the state of your mind? Okay? We get into those things, and then before you know it, now you have access to the core information that is rendering their entropic state or their unified state. So the circuit is a cipher, which is a fractal maze of contraction and expansion. Where did I hide my expansion? Which core wounds? What beliefs and assumptions? Investigate. Invest the eye gate. Invest it. Invest into it. Yeah. So the conscious manifold is an entangled heat map. So each observer is a quantum state of contraction to expansion in an entangled holographic rendering called Earth. Each observer is a quantum state of contraction to expansion in an entangled holographic rendering called Earth. So if you take all of the observer portals and you have their quantum states of contraction to expansion in an entangled measurement, that's what an Earth system is. An Earth system is a measurement of the observer's quantum states and what realities they are rendering. The geometry of a world is the quantum states of the observers, is their level of contraction to expansion. Their levels of time get dilated, their levels of space get dilated, their levels of separation get dilated, all of those things, their levels of entropy, all of that stuff is on a spectrum. That's the fundamental information that consciousness is eating. Consciousness is eating the experience of the Earth, which is measured by the quantum state of each observer portal. So you want to take an integral of all of the observer portals, an entanglement of all of their heat maps, or of all of their diodes on the conscious manifold, and you get what you are and what you are measuring. So what's happening here? Okay, the shaman's down there and, on the left, students up there in the top on the left, and the student says, please help me. The shaman says, all right, what's up? So you're meeting there in the hologram. And then the student reveals, you can see on the right side, the student is revealing stories, frequencies, quantum states. The shaman is taking a scan, right? The shaman is taking an analysis of where the stylus is on those vinyl tracks. The shaman has to take a measurement, right? And I think that there's a visual that's coming up here that has it's basically using a spectrometry, right? You're basically measuring the spectra of the observer portal to determine where the stylus is. There it is, the spectrometry right there. So the way that two observers talk to each other or interact is based on their quantum state and frequency. So the shaman is holding the spectrometer and is constantly scanning the vibration of the electromagnetic radiation of the portal that it's talking to. And if that student is not earnest, you'll hear, I'm a victim, I've been controlled and manipulated. That means I don't want to learn from you. And then the shaman will say back, I respect your free will and choice. I'm the creator as everyone, and my frame can't be shaken. I'm eternally here to serve whenever you're ready. A student comes back with earnest energy. It will be, I do want to learn from you. I'm ready to wake up. I'm ready to expand. I'm ready to come home. And its frequency will be different. So shaman is the master of gauging. The shaman is a master discerner. So the gauge is a measure of the electromagnetic radiation or frequency. What you're gauging is you're measuring the frequency. When you gauge, you are measuring the frequency. So you're watching out for core archetypes. If it's earnestness, it's going to feel like Neo. Help them train. If it's non-earnest, it's going to feel like Agent Smith. Don't get baited. The shaman is most attuned to the manifold and its infinite transformative patterns. It's most attuned to the observer's quantum states and their negentropic desire and then guiding them. They have to have a desire to come back home, a deep one, and then the shaman is very masterful at guiding them through all of their infinite transformative patterns back home. So the shaman shepherds ego crucifixion rituals with Christ as a mathematical formalism. And the algorithm is very simple. Either you're running the program of money first, Christ second, or you're running the program of Christ first, money second. So the difference is a very simple, elegant, and night and day, and that's what makes it a mathematical formalism and a compression algorithm. So if you're running the program of money first, Christ second, it's all good. Christ comes second, money is first, which means I can believe in separation and I can take advantage of whoever I want to because separation is real. Christ is just an outsourced symbol that I sometimes wear around my neck and pretend to actually be Christian. Whereas in the second example, Christ first, money second, it means that I put ego crucifixion first. I put non-separation first. And then money comes second, which means you're automatically building a regenerative world because when Christ comes first, what you're doing is you're putting forward a new future of heaven on earth that's possible. So this algorithm is a very simple investigation which forces a change in a quantum state. So if you're talking to an observer and you say, hey, are you putting money first, Christ second, or are you putting Christ first, money second? What you're doing is you're showing that portal right there an opportunity for it to change its quantum state if it's not answering that it's Christ first, money second. You see? Which is beautiful. Because if it says, that's all good, dude. Money first, Christ second, no problem. And it's like, all right, sounds good. Enjoy. If it says, obviously, always Christ first, money second. Okay, beautiful. What does Christ mean to you? Let's hear it, right? But then if there's that moment when it goes, am I actually prioritizing money over Christ? Should I actually think about how I'm behaving? And maybe me going to church on Sunday, I actually haven't actually been applying the principles that I've been declaring that I subscribe to in everything that I'm creating. And maybe I'm actually further inflating the economy. Maybe I'm actually further exacerbating collective wounding through my actions, which is not Christ. So in that moment, there's a self-reflection that can happen and a change in a quantum state. So you want to teach through your own crucifixion. That's the best teaching. Just teach through your own crucifixion. Teach through your own perpetual vibration from non-separation and of building heaven on earth, and of incredibly discerning service. So how do I apply this to business, to work, to relations? So are you seeing from non-separation? How does this improve the relationships with your family, with your significant others? How does this build a unity fabric rather than a war one in your business life? So what happens when you start seeing your business partners as yourself? What happens when you start seeing your family members as yourself? How much more will you love them? How much more will that drive home that beautiful connection, that beautiful deep, deep connection? The suffering's over. You'll never feel like you're on a different team again. That feeling sucks. Like, we're so damn close. Why does it feel like we're on a different team? We should be on the same team of that same love, that same consciousness. And so your frequency of non-separation can actually perpetually anchor that. So nobody wants a shaman around because they are constantly calling out deception, when the whole point of reality is deception. That's why the shaman is only called upon and used when the strength for healing finally overpowers the waterfall of deception. It's very deep. And you know it after you've been through it yourself. You've had to hardcore crawl out of your own bullshit and deception in order to come back home and use whatever teachers and seeking and healing and all that good stuff, science and knowledge that you could possibly find. Because your desire for healing and enlightenment and awakening was finally greater than the waterfall of deception. And that's why there's so much hesitation to call a shaman. Because it's going to deconstruct all of the contraction. And so it only actually happens when there's real deep earnestness for deconstructing that contraction. All right. Holy cow. Well, that was a beautiful two sessions in one video. We did session 3 on consciousness as the root and session 4 on shamanism as recoding in one video here. And like we said, the Unicode seminar was very, very front loaded. It was very heavy on the theoretical physics and cosmology. So that's why there's over 5 hours of that, and there's only 2.5 hours of this section, and we will see when we can get to, we're going to try to get to that third day of civilization is a reflection of frequency and also regenerative freedom. We're going to try to get to that, and that will probably be about this length as well. But all of this is just the foundation of the Unicode. It's all the foundation of that to be enhanced and to be built on and to be further refined. So we want to thank you for tuning in. We deeply appreciate you showing up and enjoying the content, and we hope it brought you a lot of value. We want to thank our event sponsor, Guaranteed Community Advisors, trusted advisors in sustainability. You can scan the QR code or check out the link in the bio below. Same to our room sponsor, Integrity Tax and Business Advisors. Thank you. You can scan the QR code there or click on the link in the bio below. And thanks for attending the Unicode seminar. We have suggested daily donations, $33, $66, $111. You can scan the PayPal or Venmo QR codes there or click the link in the bio below. And we would love to hear from you. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on this session. Again, there's going to be a lot more refinement and clarity and deeper compression algorithm of the Unicode over time. So please forgive any scatteredness or any omissions that may have happened, because there are so many profound things to try to condense into this compression algorithm. And we would love to hear from you in the comments below with what you love taking away from the episode. We would love to hear from you. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Much love, and we will see you soon. Bye.
That was so weird.